Hello folks, welcome back to the Edupedia world and I am Abhinay Gupta. Today again we'll continue with the chapter, the meeting of the board and its powers. Right? So in the previous lecture, we were discussing the basic concept behind section 188, the related party transactions. Right? And what we have covered in the previous lecture is only the heading. That doesn't mean we have skipped the entire lecture. No, that means that we have analyzed and we have felt, right? We have understood the crux of the heading, right? So we know what is a related party, who is a related party, and what are the transactions that are covered under the related party transaction as per section 188, right? So we'll give a brief revision of the entire lecture about the two topics, and then we'll move ahead with the provisions of section 188. So we have seen that the definition of the related parties are covered under section 2 clause 76. There we have the meaning, and the meaning includes, if we go by the shortcut, if you remember, director, KMP, firm, private company, public company, body corporate in general, right? So when you talk about director, it is director and its relative, KMP or its relative, a firm in which the director, the manager or relative is a partner, a private company in which the director or manager is a member or director, whatever, because ultimately it is the same thing, member or director, we generally, right, they are the same people. Or in a public company, if the director or KMP is a director, first point, and then they also hold share, the threshold limit is 2%, and that will be clubbing the shares of the relative along with the shares of the director or manager, right? Then you have a body corporate whose board or whose manager is accustomed to act as per the advice, instruction or direction given by our director. And the next is the reverse procedure. If our board of directors are accustomed to act on the advice, instruction or direction given by some other person, then that person is also related to us, right? And then we know that if both these things are done in professional capacity, we will not consider it for the definition. And the last point that we saw is about the group companies, the holding, subsidiary, associate or the common holding. That means the subsidiary of your holding. All these are related. These are considered to be collectively group companies. And we had also seen that the concept of group companies is exempt for the private limited companies, right? Then we moved on to see the applicability of section 188, the contracts and arrangements that are covered. So over there what we had seen first is the sale, purchase or supply of any goods or material. Then the selling or otherwise disposing of or buying property of any kind, leasing of property of any kind, availing or rendering of any services. These are the four basic aspects. Then we had seen if we involve an agent for these things, even the service via an agent will also be covered. Then if we have a related party who is appointed into the office or place of profit, we would be considering that. And finally, if there is an underwriting, the subscription of any security or derivative, we would be covering them in the related party transactions, right? So that is all that we have seen so far in the previous lecture, but we took a lot of time on that because we needed to understand, right? So that mugging up is not always a solution, because if you mug up and you are asked to jot down the 6 points, you will do that. But if you have to relate it into your answer, then mugging up will not help at all. Because when you're reading the answer, you have just 1 point and you need to analyze whether that particular transaction that they're talking about is a related party transaction or not. That is what you need to check. So for that you need to have an understanding. You need to get the feel rather than just mugging up, right? So now we'll move ahead with the provisions of this section. So we will see the legal requirements of section 188, right? So first thing over there that we see is that a board resolution has to be passed in the board meeting to carry on any of the above transactions that we have discussed, which means that you cannot pass a resolution by circulation, nor can you delegate this power to the committee, right? So if you want to enter into any of the above mentioned transaction as per section 188, then you will have to pass a board resolution into the board meeting only, right? Further, you will have to disclose, right? The agenda should contain the prescribed particulars. So when you are making an agenda for the board meeting, you will have to, that agenda will have to contain certain prescribed particulars. Now what are they? Right. So basically the agenda would cover the entire detail of the transaction that we are entering into. Right. The agenda itself will contain the entire, if you can say, analysis of the transaction. So over there you will have to include the name of the related party, that yeah, this is the party, and with this party we are entering into this contract. You will also have to explain the relationship with that party. Okay, he is the relative of my director, or this is the private company in which our director Mr. X is also a director. Whatever the kind of relationship you have, right, as per section 2 clause 76, you will have to specify that relationship as well, right? And then the contracts that we have seen, the applicability of the contracts and arrangement, you will have to declare the nature, duration and everything of that contract in the particulars, right? Okay, this is the kind of contract we are having. We are undertaking a contract of sale of goods, for example, right? And we will be selling them goods for the next 3 years. That is the kind of thing. So you will have to demonstrate all of it into the agenda, right? And then when you enter into a contract, there is always a term and condition for the contract, right, that both the parties have to abide by. So whatever among those terms and conditions, whatever are the material terms and conditions that would have an impact, right, you will have to disclose those terms and conditions as well, right? Now if you are entering into a contract, right, in general situation, what you say is, how do you confirm that you have received the contract? There is an advance payment made or advance money taken, right? That is how there is a fixation of contract, that okay, an advance has been paid, now the contract is ours. So they will have to also see whether an advance has been taken or given, because in that case, when they are discussing whether or not to pass the contract, that would have an impact. If they have an advance, if they have given an advance, then that advance is at stake. For example, if my company is X Limited and I am discussing about RP transactions, right, and I have given an advance of rupees 20 lakh to the other company through the related company, so in that case that would be an obstacle in the decision making, because if we do not commence with the transaction, that advance is lost, right? So we'll have to see whether or not any advance has been given, right? Then when we have entered into a contract, for example, in the case we have seen a contract for sale of goods. So when we are selling the good, are we selling them at the arm's length price? Yes or no, whatever is the scene, how are we determining that price, right? How are we determining all the other pricings? If no, then how are we determining the pricing, right, and the other commercial terms of the contract that we have entered into? So these things are also needed to be disclosed alongside. And then you will also have to disclose that okay, if we are calling a board meeting and then we have to see whether or not to enter into the transaction, so first of all tell us, have you considered all the factors which are relevant to the contract, right? If it has been considered, well and good, but if there are some factors that have not been considered, then you will also have to give a rationale behind not considering those factors. You will have to say, okay, those factors were not important, and this is the reason why it was not important, so we did not consider it, but otherwise the major factors are considered, and this is the conclusion of the consideration, right? That is how you need to disclose, right? And then if there is any other point, any other aspect that is relevant as per the board, then you need to disclose that as well. Right, so when the entire agenda has been prescribed, the particulars have been defined that yeah, these things have to be included, they are included in the agenda, then you call the board meeting. And when you're calling the board meeting specifically, you need to make sure that the director who is interested is not involved in the meeting, right? That director who is interested in this contract means the director with whom we have established the relationship of the related party transaction, that director need not attend, he need not be present at the board meeting when the discussion is under process, right? So that is the other legal requirement of the section, right? Then the section also requires for a special resolution by the shareholders, but that special resolution is basically required when a particular bandwidth is exceeded, when a particular threshold limit is exceeded, right? So you have the threshold limit for all the transactions that we have seen in the previous lecture. Remember, we had seen the transaction: sale, purchase of goods, rendering of service, buying or disposing of the property, then agent service. Remember, we had seen those transactions. So although all of those transactions, they have a prescribed limit, a threshold limit. So if that limit is exceeded, then you need to pass a special resolution also, and that should be prior to passing the entire transaction. So do you remember the first transaction that we discussed about? Yes, that was the sell, purchase or supply of any goods or material, right? So what is the threshold limit applicable for that? So the limit, right, the section 188 prescribes the limit. It says that if the transaction, either that transaction standing alone, an individual transaction, or all the transactions throughout the year with that particular related party, with that particular person, right, whom we have determined to be a related party, if the entire aggregate of the transactions with that party exceeds 10% of the total turnover of the company, the sale, purchase, supply of goods and materials, these would amount to the turnover of the company. They would relate to the turnover. The more you sell, the more the turnover. That is what we call turnover, right? The amount of selling that you make. So if you are making a sale contract with a person, a related person, and that exceeds 10% of your total transaction, total turnover throughout the year, then that is a major transaction that you are entering into, and so you will have to pass a special resolution for that. But again, flat 10% is not given. What the provision says that it should be either 10% of the turnover or rupees 100 crore, whichever is lower. So if you have a turnover of say 2000 crore, right, then your 10% of 2000 crore would be 200 crore. But now 200 crore is also a very huge amount, right? Because if you have to if you're dealing with a related party, right, you're entering into a transaction, and that transaction, because that related party is maybe related to the director, and the director has persuaded along with other directors to enter into the transaction, and then at the end the company finds out that the transaction was not favorable for the company, right? Then what happens? The profit of the company goes for a toss, right? There is a loss situation arising. So to curb that, the provision says that you will have to pass a special resolution also, that apart from the directors, even the members would be involved, right, and they would approve this transaction. But now waiting up to 200 crore would be a larger limit, right? Because again, getting a financial impact of 200 crore would be a major impact. So what it says is either 10% or 100 crore, whichever is lower. That means a maximum up to 100 crore is what you will be waiting. Beyond that, you will pass a special resolution for a transaction. Otherwise, you cannot undertake the transaction, right? Then the next transaction you had was the transaction which relates to the selling or otherwise disposing or buying of property of any kind. Remember, you will not see those provisions on the screen now, because by this time you should remember those things. This is the second lecture of this section, right? That is the purpose. That was done purposefully, that this is not displayed on the screen. I hope you people remember it. The second provision was selling or otherwise disposing of the or buying a property, right? We were discussing about the property, the second thing. So over there again you have a threshold limit, you have a bandwidth given. So over here also you have the common bandwidth, you have the common ceiling, either 1/10 or 100 crores. But there is one important aspect to understand. While you're talking about property, what will you do with the turnover aspect? Why are you comparing the property aspect with the turnover? Turnover deals with the goods and services that you are dealing with, that is your operating activity. But when you're talking about properties, right, that is your major fixed asset actually. That is a part of fixed asset when you're talking about property. So is it fair to compare it with the turnover? No. So over here they say 1/10, that is 10% of the net worth instead of turnover. So make sure for the property they use the term net worth instead of turnover. But for selling and purchasing of your goods and services, they use the term turnover. So over there they're checking 10% limit of the turnover. Here they are checking 10% limit of the net worth, or 100 crore, whichever is lower, right? Then the third transaction that you had, that dealt with leasing of property of any kind. Remember? So if you are leasing a property of any kind, again here, since you are dealing with the property, right, we will be concerned with the turnover of 10% of the net worth, right? But the act goes a step ahead and says that in the case of leasing of a property, we would also compare it with 10% of turnover, right? So you have seen in the case of goods and services, it is 10% of turnover or 100 crore, whichever is lower. In the case of property, where you are actually selling or disposing of or buying a property, there you had 10% of net worth. But while you're leasing a property, they have included 10% of net worth as well as 10% of turnover, right? Whichever, or 100 crore, whichever is lower. So basically, if you understand, then there is no purpose of involving this 10% of turnover aspect over here. Why? Because a general question, have you ever seen a company with more net worth than its turnover in real life? Right? There are if there are any, then very minimum rare companies who have their net worth more than their turnover. There may be a situation in any particular year that the turnover is going down, they're not performing very well, right? But that is not a general thing to see. But still, as an exception, they have included 10% of the turnover, and we would remember it and we would write it down in our examinations as well. Then the next aspect that you had was about rendering of services, right? Either you're availing or you're rendering services. For that, again, you have a limitation of 10% of the turnover. If you are a service providing, then your rendering of service would define your turnover, right? So you have 10% of your turnover or 50 crore, whichever is lower. So this is the first place where your bandwidth comes down from 100 crore to 50 crore, right? So we'll have to keep this point in mind as well, right? Then we had seen an aspect where we talked about any person being appointed into the office or place of profit, right? So in that situation, if we have any person, any relative of the director or the KMP or anybody who is appointed into the company to hold any office of profit, we'll discuss what office of profit is, right? To hold any office or place of profit, then if the remuneration that he is receiving, if it exceeds 2.5 lakh, then we would require to pass a special resolution. And mind you, this 2.5 lakh is the monthly remuneration. Don't even think of an annual thing, because 2.5 lakh even engineers are paid more than this these days, right? So 2.5 lakh is the per month remuneration that we are talking about, right? And in the final situation where we are talking about the underwriting the subscription, there we'll check the limit whether or not it exceeds 1% of the net worth, flat, right? So now let us revise. Over there we had seen 7 different transactions, right? The first was sale, purchase or supply of goods, materials, services, right? So over here, when we are seeing the bandwidth, there are few key common things that we need to remember. First is, we are not talking about a single transaction. Either it's a single transaction or the aggregate of transactions throughout the year. If it exceeds the limit, then we would have to pass a special resolution. First point. Second is the places where we talked about the agent being involved, right? So that is still applicable. If that limit is exceeded individually or directly or via an agent, it doesn't matter. If the limit is exceeded, we would have to pass a special resolution, right? Then if we go back to the revision of it, then when we're talking about sale purchase of goods and material, and we are dealing with 2 points of properties, right? Over there the limit was, everywhere we have limit of 10%, either it's of the turnover or net worth. So when we're talking about goods and material, we talk about turnover. When we're talking about property, right, selling or disposing of the property or buying property, we're talking about net worth, 1/10 of net worth, right? The third is leasing of property. There we have 1/10 of both net worth and turnover, right? And when we're talking about services, again we have 1/10 of net turnover, right? Now the other bandwidth is the monetary limit So for the first three cases, when we're talking about goods, material and properties, both the cases of properties, we have a bandwidth of 100 crores to the maximum, right? But in the case of rendering of service, we have a bandwidth of 50 crores, right? And when we're talking about holding a place of profit, office of place of profit, then the bandwidth that we check is rupees 2.5 lakh per month as remuneration. If it exceeds beyond that, then we'll have to pass a special resolution. And for the underwriting commission, it is just 1% of the net worth, right? Now I hope you remember it. Now I hope you remember the transactions as well as the limits. It is easy. It is just what you need to understand and sync, right? Okay. Now you have seen the need of passing a special resolution, right? So when you need to pass a special resolution, you need to call a general meeting. And when do you call a general, and when you're calling a general meeting, you will have to send a notice, right? So along with the notice, you will also send a statement, an explanatory statement to notice, and that should also contain the prescribed particulars. Now what are the particulars? Again, when you're sending it to the shareholders also, you will have to specify the name of that related party, right? The name of the director or the KMP who is related to that party, right? The nature of relationship that they have, either they're the relative or they hold the share or they govern the board of director, whatever is the case, the nature that we have, we'll have to disclose it, right? Then we'll also have to disclose the nature, material item, monetary value and particulars of the contract and arrangement, right? So what is the kind of contract we are entering among the 6 contracts that we have seen, right? What is the monetary value of it, so that we can analyze whether it is, when we are calling the shareholders meeting, obviously it is beyond the bandwidth, right? But still now they need to know how material is it, right? So you'll have to disclose the monetary value as well, right? And then if there is any other relevant information, you will have to disclose that along with it. Okay. Now the notice has been sent. The shareholders are aware of what is going to happen, what is the transaction that is going to take place, and they need to pass a special resolution. So they come for a meeting. Now, do you think there can be a situation where a shareholder is also interested in the contract? There can be. That shareholder has shares in the other company, that shareholder is a relative to the other company. There is always a possibility. So if such kind of possibility occurs, right, or there can be a situation where the member himself is a related party. So in those situations, that particular member will not be allowed to vote for the resolution, right? And if there is a contract which is being entered into between the holding and the subsidiary company itself, then a special resolution passed in the holding company would suffice. You don't have to pass another special resolution in the subsidiary company as well. Okay, both of us are interested, so holding company does the same formality, subsidiary does the same formality, and it is a cumbersome task, right? So if the holding company fulfills the criteria of special resolution, we would consider it okay for the subsidiary company as well, right? Now, before we move ahead, here is the place where we have the second amendment, right? The amendment that is applicable for your May 16 examination. So as per the amendment, right, first we'll talk about the genuinity, the need for the amendment. Now, do you think in the above situations, in the above transactions that we have talked about, is it compulsory to pass a special resolution? Because even if it is a related party transaction, right, the director is not allowed to vote. So it is the other directors who are applying their brain and mind for the company, and then they're deciding. And after that also the shareholders are called. Now, is it compulsory that you have to pass a special resolution and you need to get the special majority? No, even the normal majority of shareholders would do, right? Because passing a special resolution is a task, but an ordinary resolution can be passed. And again, over there also you have the same level of security. If not same, it is not a bad security, right? You are secured against those biased transactions and the transactions which are not favorable to the company. Because even if when you pass an ordinary resolution, you need a majority. So majority shareholders, if you're talking about, then you have to actually trust their decision. You have to trust the decision of the directors as well. Passing a special resolution for every transaction like that becomes a cumbersome task. So the amendment that has come up in the month of June 2015, it says that the ordinary resolution can be passed instead of special resolution. So in our examination in May 16, what you're going to do is you will write about the ordinary resolution. So whatever we have studied so far, wherever we have seen the concept of special resolution in the legal requirements, right? So over there you will replace that special resolution with ordinary resolution. That is an amendment, right? Along with that amendment, you also have an exemption. Exemptions given to the private company specifically, right? So in the private company, now there was a problem. In the private company, you know, it is a closely held company. Members, directors, basically they're the same people, right? So after passing the board resolution, if you call for the resolution for the members, right, and if the director is interested, he's not able to vote. Now if the director is also a member, if that member is also interested, even the member will not be able to vote. And you don't have a lot of members in a private company. So if a member is restrained from voting, because generally there may be a lot of related party transaction in a private company, so if a member is restrained from voting, then who will vote? How will you pass the ordinary or the special resolution, right? So for that purpose, the requirement of the shareholder, the related shareholder not being able to vote is ruled out for the private companies. So if you are a private company and you are a shareholder, you are a related party, you are still allowed to vote in the shareholders resolution to pass the ordinary resolution, right? That is an exemption given to the private company because they went to the practicality issue and they found out that if they do not give this exemption, there is gonna be a great operating issue with the private company. So these kind of amendments, these kinds of exemptions were long awaited, and finally they have come up, right? So basically, in a private company, in the board resolution, interested directors can vote. In a ordinary resolution, the related party members can also vote, right? That is an exemption given only to the private limited companies. Make sure, keep that in mind, right? We are talking about the private companies. So next we would cover the concept of OPP, right? That is the office or place of profit. We have referred to it initially, but we did not discuss as to what it is actually. So what do you think? What is office or place of profit? Now there can be two situations, or basically two category of person holding this kind of an office. First is a director. A director himself can hold an office or place of profit, or there is some other person who will hold that office or place of profit. There can be just two scenarios, either he is a director or he is not a director. So if that person is a director, right, basically I'll tell you one thing, that when you're talking about office or place of profit, we basically understand it by saying that the person is holding the office in the company and he's paid a remuneration for that. That is basically an office or place of profit, right? You have given him a position in your office. He is holding a position, and then you are paying him a remuneration, and that is his profit, right? But in the case of director, he is already holding the office. He is holding the office in a position of a director, right? And now, when will you consider him to hold office and place of profit? That is when he is being paid a remuneration over and above the normal remuneration that he is entitled to. So if he is being paid an excess remuneration, then we would consider that excess remuneration is coming to him because of the place of profit that he is holding, right? And in any other person situation, if the other person is holding any position in the office and he is being paid a remuneration for that, we would consider him to be holding an office or place of profit, right? So that is basically the meaning of the OPP that we were discussing. Now we'll see about the non-applicability of section 188. Now, can you think of a situation where you have entered into a transaction with a related party, but you will still not apply this section 188? You have qualified both the criteria. The other person is a related party, and you have entered into a prescribed transaction, the contract and arrangement. Still, the section will not be applicable. What are those situations? So there are just two such situations. One is if you are entering into a transaction in an ordinary course of business, and the second is that the transaction that you are entering into is at arm's length price, and I hope you all know what arm length price is, right? Basically, arm length price is the price that they would have charged if he was an unrelated party, right? That means there would have been no conflict of interest, right? So that is the two situation where it would be not applicable, where the provisions of section 188 is not applicable, right? So the next legal requirement that you have is the legal requirement of disclosing in your board report. So what is the disclosure that the directors would make in their board report, right? So basically, whenever you are entering into any transaction that falls under section 188, you will have to report all those transactions point-wise into your board report, right? And then you will also have to explain and give a justification for entering into such a transaction, right? Because if you are considering it to be a related party transaction, that means that the terms of contract or the pricing, or there has been a little shift. It is not an arm's length price, neither the terms and conditions nor the price, right? So that is the only situation when it falls under 188. So if you have entered into such a transaction, why have you entered it? Please give a justification, because you would have got a better position in the market, a better price, a better consideration, right? So the board needs to justify their rationale, right, behind entering into such a transaction. There's one more thing that I forgot to mention earlier, is that if you are not able to pass an ordinary resolution in the shareholders meeting before entering into the transaction, then you can also ratify the transaction by passing an ordinary resolution within 3 months, right? So now we would see the option to recover the damage, the option which is available with the board to avoid the contract and recover the damage if something goes wrong. So what is the situation when the board will have this power? Only when the board is not involved, right? So if the transaction has been entered into without passing a board resolution or the special resolution, right, then the board has the opinion to recover the damage from the director who has entered into the transaction. Yeah, and we would also include the case where the transaction is not even ratified in the shareholders meeting within 3 months, right? So what will be the consequence? How do they recover the damage? So first of all, they will have the power to declare that agreement or contract to be void, right? So that contract or arrangement shall be voidable at the opinion of the board, at the option of the board, right? Second is that the director who is concerned in that transaction, right, shall indemnify the company against the loss that the company has incurred. And the third is that the company can also proceed against its own employee and director if something goes wrong in this situation, right? So first is the contract would be voidable. Second, the director has to indemnify. Third, the company would initiate a proceeding against its own director and employee if needed, right? And if the director or employee has been found guilty, right, if there is a contravention made to the section 188, then they are liable to certain punishment as well, as per the act. So as per the act, the punishment would be an imprisonment of 1 year or a fine, right, that would extend from 25,000 rupees to 5 lakh rupees, or both of it combined. This is the case of listed company, and if there is some other company, you would skip the imprisonment, but still you would have to bear a fine that would range from 25,000 to rupees 5 lakh, right? So only difference is that if it is a listed company, you would be succumb to the imprisonment of 1 year as well. Otherwise, you would escape the imprisonment. The rest of the penalty remains the same, right? So that is all about the entire provision of section 188. I hope it was clear with you and the class was actually beneficial for you, right? And we'll discuss some of the questions based on this topic, based on this section in the upcoming lecture, right?